Hello, welcome to another episode of Full Circle with me, Onyx. And today we're gonna obviously kind of like talk a little bit maybe about shamanism, since that's the core, that's the root of magic. And in a weird way, it's kind of the root of being a human being. And I don't know, there's lots going on. Let's just say there's lots to cover. But the topic, I think, is going to be on like psychic and magical protection and really doing it in taking accountability to self reflect on our behavior and our beliefs, our self concept and boundaries, and why maybe we feel the need to defend ourselves, take action. Why do we feel like it's our right to be involved? Breaking boundaries, assuming boundaries that aren't there, extending, So when I really start reflecting on all the past situations I was in or have had put upon me, um, I've noticed a few common things. Either you or the other person assumes you're in their territory, in within their um, sphere of influence. Like there's a commonality. Like they are treating you like they treat themselves or they treat others. Like you're one. Like so, if someone wasn't in your sphere, it would be someone you don't feel like you have a right to talk to, a right to interact so informally with. So we find that we treat our family members the worst, our lovers the worst, but we treat strangers so much better. Because why? Is because we feel, because we're so accustomed to them, they're familiar, then they're within your sphere, they make up your personal world. So most people can't help but feel so comfortable to unleash on a family member, mistreat under the name of love. So a good example is you can't talk away uh, you can't talk that way or treat my brother that way, but I can because he's my brother. Or you could say within your own nationality, your own ethnic orientation. Well, I can say this racial slur because I'm of that race. There's this assumed familiar, this assumed entitlement. So we feel entitled to treat our brothers and our sisters, our friends, our coworkers a certain way. But in the reality of it, we don't. That's with not in our sphere. So these assumed spheres or circle of influence, uh, they're breached and then people get offended. There's also this assumed. We might absorb from other people's sphere information, experiences, whatever. We take it upon ourselves, we absorb it, we make it personal. And then we feel like we need to defend ourselves and we get going and we say, oh, I was feeling it. We assume a responsibility, a moral obligation to defend, stand up, get involved, and we don't. That's actually not in our sphere. And on one level, we have to break boundaries. On another level, boundaries can't be so rigid or they don't work, they collapse. So there's flexibility. So boundaries is something, it's an ongoing evolution as we evolve, as humanity grows up and wakes up and we change, our customs. So there's customary morality, and it shows up in the forms of taboos, and it shows up just like read the room. Like corporations have a type of language, a type of dress code, a hierarchical status, and even a language That's the customs. And when you breach that or don't go with it, you get reprimanded, you get fired, looked down upon, uh, you know, and you cause chaos within the system. And that's a negative type of chaos because certain customs, rituals, formalities help with cohesion of a structure. So, what we're experiencing globally, so besides it just happening to you on a personal level or even within yourself, a lot of our mental problems is because we're assuming responsibility. We're allowing other people's spheres of influence to then dominate our own personal sphere. So when you don't really understand or no one points out, you have a personal sphere of your own. It's up to you to sweep it out, clear it out, and create what you want to maintain and hold within that magic circle what you desire. So globally, with like cancel culture and a few other things, it's really rotting out the system as they're asking for understanding and tolerance, but then kind of turning a blind eye to the type of customs, the type of for rituals that create cohesion in a society. So I would say we're really flirting with, uh, there's always that building up and breaking down energy going on within creation and evolution. And a lot of people feel lost because organizations have assumed the authority role. And the actual authority is yourself. So, and you can't, so personal sovereignty. So, divine, like there's like divine kingship or queenship. This sense of entitlement may come down through like a hereditary birth line. My family has always been very wealthy, or we come from a very notorious gene pool of a certain race, ethnicity, background. And so the way you grew up could grant you a certain type of assumed authority. So, you know, so the other people's opinions don't matter and whatever, and you're able to guide yourself. The other one is sovereignty. Sovereignty is uh, a lordship, a kingship from within. Uh, it's a it's like your moral. It's like the fiber you were built out of. It's recognizing and honoring your own mind, your own rightness. Uh, like you know, you're divinely appointed to this existence. It's not questionable. It's like there is a governing power that you work with, that you are embodiment of. And so it's like you have a sense of purpose and a sense of expertise and grace. So a lot of people might just come on the stage of life with a certain level of authority. They might have mastery of speech, become great communicators. And when they communicate, everyone listens. And it's almost like an instinctual skill set that they have. And it's recognized. And it's not because, well, my dad has this money and he owns the corporation, so you guys have to listen to me type of rulership, authority. It's sovereignty. This is a skill. It's matured within me. It's something I naturally have, a raw talent and ability, a deep insight, a very keen mind. And so I rule. And it's not, and whatever position I have, I still maintain that crown. It's like I could be a janitor, I could be a retail associate. I and I still have that internal pedigree, that internal certificate of PhD level, you're a brilliant mind, you're a brilliant heart, you're a brilliant human being. And so this is what sovereignty is about. It's like I don't need a castle to be a ruler of a nation. All I need is a keen mind and the gift of speech, and I can influence the world through my YouTube channel, or the people that I meet. And the subject matter doesn't have to stick with psychology or magic, it could be anything, and still that divine wisdom comes through, or whatever it is for you, you know? And so it's really honoring yourself, knowing your talents, knowing who you are and what you want out of life helps you maintain your boundaries, your uh, sense of self. Like you're a character. And so it creates, you have to have a really strong identity, a firm identity, a solid, unarguable identity. When you don't have it, you feel triggered. You polarize. When you don't have a personal identity, you leech on, you hold on, you graft on to ideas and concepts that you didn't really choose. So, a good example is maybe being raised in a church. They tell you what good and bad is. You go, that sounds good. Okay. And then you decide, well, I'm a good person. Well, that all came outside of you. You grew up in that. A lot of people believe in certain Christian figures. Um, why? And why? But so the first thing, so really what should be taught is believing in yourself, believing in your own inner resources, your faculties, your mind, your heart, your senses. And it shows up is indecisiveness. It shows up as anxiety. It shows up as playing the victim. You seeing the world bigger than you not being able to handle yourself in real time, have a confrontational discussion. It's so when you start viewing things as war, when you start viewing things as fighting, viewing things as dangerous, um, and attacking, it's because you don't have enough personal authority. If you really valued your wisdom, valued your journey in life, you wouldn't be offended. So you would say, oh, well, someone is sharing their point of view. Well, here's mine if you want it, or you don't take it on. Like, so self concept is a big thing. Neville Goddard goes over this self concept. He basically says we our imagination, and this idea of who we are, this self concept, is basically that. It's imaginary, illusionary. So you might say, I am. So you go about trying to actualize the self. And when the self is not actualized, maybe you might feel it's attacked. So part of your self concept is, I'm a good Christian woman. And then you find yourself in a dilemma when you don't want to give all your money to some organization uh, that's supposedly maybe feeding the children, but you don't really know where it goes. So you hesitate. And then you say, am I a bad Christian woman because I don't want to give? And you get tripped up in it. Or you're like, all these people are treating me horrible. And because I'm a good Christian woman, do I need to forgive them? Do I need to open the doors with love and let them take all my resources and take advantage of me? Is this love? And we get, or I should be loving my family and friends, but yet they're so abusive. As a good Christian woman, should I just pray more? Should I just be more loving? Should I fight fire with water instead of fire with fire? Like, what do I do? And then we find ourselves trapped. We find ourselves not being able to share our truth. We find ourselves confused and hurt. And then we might seek passive aggressive means to very simple solutions. I should just go talk to my neighbor. So a lot of us get emotional, a lot of us freak out uh, because we're not used to actually dealing with people face to face. We're not used to standing up for our own voice, our own insights. We're not used to handling a no. When we can't handle a no, we might resort to passive aggressive things. So religion and magic look very similar. So a lot of people, when religion fails them, believing in a God they don't know, or whatever it is, believing in a rule book of life called morality handed down by an authority figure called a church or a government, when things quickly break down because they were all ideals, not realistic to reality and human nature, a lot of people tend to go to magic, some nefarious means, praying for an angel to destroy their neighbor, calling on a demon to destroy their neighbor, or win their ex back or something like that, or push out a coworker. And so we're looking once again to things outside of ourselves instead of trusting your inner power. Your Go talk to someone, tell them. Hold on. All right. How to get my food out of the air fryer. Um, so basically, let's just bring this in. I kind of forgot a little bit what we were talking about for a few seconds. But reclaiming this inner authority so we don't have to use passive aggressive means. And so you are source energy. You have the power, the means, and the inner resources. And for me, I try, because I am shy and I don't like confrontation. And we're all coming from our own perspective. And a lot of people can't relate well. And so conflict happens. So the first principle is understanding conflict and tension is actually part of the creative process. Without conflict, without the ripping up and destructive forces at play, plaguing your relationship, plaguing your body, there's no motivation to grow. Everything just stays static, you know? And so conflict is necessary to deepen relationships, to understand ourselves more. Conflict strengthens love bonds. And there's a lot of psychology into that. So understanding conflict as a friend, like the yin yang symbol, and it creates energy. So if everything is perfect, if everything's okay, and we don't fight, it doesn't mean we're being good. It doesn't mean it is good. It means actually it's getting negative. Actually, it's like the Tower card. A great fall is going to happen. So I think for some people, they try to keep the peace. They talk loving and they don't really express the total depth of how you feel betrayed, how you feel disempowered, how you feel humiliated and shamed and wronged. And so, even though you may use the words, hey, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a notice, 3 days notice if we want to plan to hang out. That's really not expressing the truth of it. That material, those emotions, those thoughts haven't been honored, and that's on you. So there is never anyone else to blame but you. So I look at everything as a growth opportunity to more power. So instead of feeling disempowered, which I may feel at a time, I transmute it. I do internal alchemy and I become even more powerful through more awareness, through more sensitivity, through all the hardships of pain and suffering. Instead of feeling like I need to defend, I need to retaliate and try to get that sense of power back through loss, I reflect. I think about it. I examine myself and say, okay, this is where I was lacking in boundaries. This is where I was out in body. This is where I wasn't considering other people's needs. This is where my ego was inflated. This is where I was caught in a reactive, passive aggressive coping mechanism or whatever. So just some self reflection, and not more fuel to shame or blame myself or others, but to then grow. And so from ouch, that hurts, to thank you, and an even better thank you because now I'm even more powerful. So I would say, yeah, try to use this dimension first, you know, voice it. So I was in this power struggle with this lady who was at work with us, and she was, unconscious of her energy, and she was very manipulative and all sorts of weird stuff. And, I tried to just avoid her, and you know, and yes, it was a combination of magical means and and just being, so I obeyed the rules of the corporation, treat everyone with the same uh, open door policy that we have, treat everyone with respect, whether it's a customer or an employee. Those values go for everyone. And then I actually spoke to her directly when she tried to get confrontational with me. You know, she was like, blah, 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 just trying to dig in for something. I turned around with my own personal authority, which shocked her. And I was like, I told her I don't appreciate her raising her voice into authoritative tones. I don't appreciate certain authoritative words which are, designed to put someone else down. I go, if you're going to speak to me, it's going to be on equal ground with respect. And it shocked her, that confrontation of raw truth of how it was going to be, how I feel, what works for me. She was all about what works for her. She wasn't even considering what works for me. So when you really have a sense of personal authority that comes from being a sovereign being, when you really honor your mind, you're like, wait a minute, I'm just as smart as anyone with a degree. And them going to school or them specializing in a certain career path doesn't make them any smarter. Their eyes aren't working any better. Their brain isn't working any better. My mind works just as well. It's of a divine origin. It's up to me to develop it and make it useful, And but when we're just talking, here is another person, they are equal to me. So a lot of people have a hard time. They think, if I have a crown, you can't have one, because that doesn't make me special, right? No, everyone can have a crown. And so I like to think a lot of people who've come with conflict with me forget I get to wear a crown too. They come into my business, push my boundaries, assert their sphere of influence, in negative ways and positive ways, whatever, in controlling ways. And they forget I have a crown too, and it's equally as valuable. So there's this quote, my rights begin where yours end. Once again, that's about boundaries. So some people will be like, I'm not going to look at you and I'm not going to talk to you. And you're a retail associate, so when you say, hi, welcome into the store, I'm going to ignore you. And I'm asserting my royalty, my status, my specialness. And then 3 seconds later, they come up to the register. I'm like, all right. I play their game. I'm like, you don't want to talk to me. You're going to look at me in disgust. And I'm a lowly retail person. But now you're at the register and you need me to help you with a return. Since we're not on talking, since we're not talking to each other because I'm obeying your rules, good luck finding an associate to help you out. Oh, you're on a lunch break and your time is important to you. Well, I'm just a lowly worker, and so maybe I should just take my time And since we're not on talking terms, you're going to have to ask now, does anyone work here? Will anyone help me? I don't see anyone at the registers. So it's like, and I look at that and I go, oh, well, you came into our store with your crown on, but you failed to realize you're actually in our kingdom and we have crowns, and you're actually in a foreign kingdom. That means you have to subordinate to the rules of that kingdom. So when we really start looking at boundaries as kingdoms and kingships and queenships and people who are ruled, so obviously my boss would be the emperor of our kingdom, of our land, you know, but, so you're a citizen within that kingdom. So it's just a fun way to look at things and manage and negotiate energies and decide what's important and what's not important. So, but really, people, what calls you into action? Because it's really weird. My sister thinks she's always defending her wounded self, her misunderstood self, her pious religious self. And in order to defend, you have to first feel victimized and attacked. But the curious thing is, no one in our family is like that. No one is like, let me say something to hurt you. Let me do something to offend you. We're actually just kind of a chill family. So no one really has that intention. So she has to make it up in her mind or find a reason to feel victimized. So she's really into the victim role right now. She's been playing it for like 20 years. So the other day, I was talking with my brother and my sister, and I happened to use the J word, And this other sister, the one who wants to play the victim, butts herself into the conversation and starts saying the J word really offends her, and, and she would appreciate it if I wouldn't use that word around her. And I'm like, so you're telling me that I can't use a certain word because it offends you? I mean, so it disturbs her. So she's bought into this like religion, and she wonders why her life is super dysfunctional. And it's like, because you never chose, like you didn't create you don't have a firm sense of self. You don't feel good about yourself. You don't know who you are. You grafted yourself onto a belief system, is what religion's there for, to help people who don't have an identity glom on to something, a structure, ideology. There's no substance in reality for it. So you're feeling threatened. Her self-concept is feeling threatened. She feels triggered. There's this moral dilemma going on of what's right and what's wrong. And I'm like, you know what? You know how many people are named J in South America? So are they now all speaking of profanity? Did they just name their child a profanity? And she also didn't have the ability to discern what an expression is versus a statement, which versus, or a curse is. So using a sacred name in a derogatory, negative way, I can understand that. I'm like, why? But if you're just using it as a friendly expression, that's different. So her inability, well, she didn't want to use her reasoning skills, but she sure felt offended, triggered, and she didn't understand it was affecting her self-concept. This idea that she's this pious Christian woman helping out her mother and father, and really it's like the opposite. They're helping her out, and she's not so great. She's not being honest. But anyway, so it turns into this little war for a minute. And it bothered me because every time I go to my parents' house, she always has something to say and then gets mad when you use logic and reason to dismantle it. So when you stand up for yourself and you are willing to talk it out, look at it from multiple angles, she retaliates in, bad vibes, argument, throwing a temper tantrum, running away. I'm like, yeah, she's like in her 40s, so I don't get it. But if you don't, so she doesn't understand that argument, conflict, points of view, let's have a discussion. And one, let's like stay in our lane, stay in our sphere. If someone outside of you is doing something that bothers you, it's really kind of not your business. You're being triggered internally. You can't live in a padded room. You can't try to change the world so you feel okay. These are control issues. So there's major control issues in her crazy religion that she's adopted. A lot of people don't understand the beliefs you have, you've adopted. And the faith you have in those beliefs is actually loyalty to those beliefs. So you're loyal to concepts, ideas, these beliefs that have all come outside of you. They never originated within you. People aren't walking around with an internal truth. They're walking around with things that they've absorbed from institutions, from other people, from books, from everyone else, the whole world, the environment. And so it's like, anyways, so we're understanding that most problems, I would say 98% of all your problems, that your reasons to attack and defend in magic or psychic ways, come because it's challenging your identity, your personality. And from this identity and personality, this self-concept, is how you also construct your personal world. So your world is threatened and you personally are threatened and you feel attacked. And it creates a strong energy to feel scared or anxious or defeated or humiliated. So we have all these deep emotions. It's happening because we feel so triggered, so out of control, when someone or something has the ability to pull the strings, it seems like, and disempower us. So then people seek religious or supernatural means to regain control. And all of this could be fixed if we just start cultivating our inner sense of authority and reclaim our mind, reclaim our life, reclaim our bodies, and become sovereign beings, with divine right to be. And, and so, yeah, we obviously didn't. No magic was required. It was just a little basic psychology